One of the men I coached recently looked at me and said something I hear more often than you might imagine. He said, "Sandy, nobody talks about this, but we hadn't been intimate in years." Then he asked me a question. Does that make me a bad person for wanting more? If you've ever asked yourself that question, I want you to know something. You're not alone. Today, I want to talk about one of the most painful and least talked about subjects in the marriage, the sexless marriage. Now, before we go any further, let me say this. This video is not about blaming husbands. It's not about blaming wives. And it certainly is not about deciding whether anyone should stay or leave a marriage. Every relationship has its own story. Sometimes a lack of intimacy grows out of years of unresolved conflict. Sometimes it's emotional distance. Sometimes it's stress. Sometimes it's health issues. Sometimes it's depression, anxiety, hormones. Sometimes it's caregiving responsibilities. Sometimes it's resentment that was never addressed. Sometimes, despite two people trying their best, they simply drift apart. That's why I'm not interested in assigning blame. I'm interested in helping you understand what happens when intimacy disappears and how that pain can shape the divorce that follows. Here's what I've learned. A sexless marriage is rarely just about sex. It's about connection. It's about feeling wanted, feeling chosen, feeling seen, feeling like your spouse reaches for you instead of pulling away. When that disappears for months or years, it can create incredible loneliness. And loneliness inside a marriage is one of the hardest kinds of loneliness there is, because you're sharing a home, but you don't feel emotionally close. You're sleeping beside someone, yet you feel completely alone. For many men, that creates shame. They begin asking themselves questions like, what's wrong with me? Am I no longer attractive? Am I failing as a husband? Those thoughts don't just hurt. They become stories that affect confidence, self-worth, patience, even the way they show up as fathers. Then divorce begins. And suddenly people think they're fighting about money or the house or retirement, but often they're fighting over years of hurt, years of rejection, years of conversations that never happened, years of feeling misunderstood. That's why I want to ask you 3 questions. The first is, what are you really grieving? Are you grieving the loss of physical intimacy? Or are you grieving the loss of emotional closeness? The feeling of being loved? The feeling of being chosen? Sometimes what hurts the most isn't the absence of sex, it's the absence of connection. The second question is, what story have you been telling yourself? I wasn't enough. I wasn't desirable. I wasn't lovable. Those stories are powerful, but they aren't always true. Don't let the years of pain define your worth. The third question is, what kind of relationship do you want to build in the future? Not just with another partner, with yourself. with your children, with the people who matter most. Because if you don't heal from the loneliness of this marriage, you may unknowingly carry that hurt into the next relationship. And here's something else I want to say. If you're still married and both of you want to repair the relationship, don't assume the marriage is beyond hope simply because intimacy has faded. For some couples, honest conversations, counseling, and willingness from both partners to understand each other's needs can make a meaningful difference. But if your marriage is ending, don't let the end of your marriage become the end of your confidence, or your identity, or your hope. This season does not define you. It prepares you, not for another marriage, not for another relationship, but for becoming a healthier man than you've been before. Because that's what the comeback method is all about. I'm not here to help you win your divorce. I'm here to help you become the kind of man your children will still respect, and the kind of man who can build a healthy relationship in the future. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd love for you to subscribe. And if you're looking for someone to help you navigate the emotional side of divorce with honesty, accountability, and hope, I'd be honored to work with you one-on-one. You'll find information in the description below. And until next time, remember this: your marriage may have ended, but your story isn't over. In many ways, it's just the beginning. Thanks for being here.